Yo, what up? It's Deontay Harris with the New Orleans Saints. Y'all Saints Happy Hour podcast? Yeah. No bueno, not good. Y'all Saints takes. It's just awful. And I think it's because the drinks that y'all be drinking be having y'all a little woozy and y'all be forgetting like what team y'all talking about or something. I don't know what it is, but we gotta figure something out because it's bad. Let's regroup, reassess, and just be better, All love.
Ralph,
Saints
you're
happy-
muted. There you go.
Oh, all right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Saints Happy Hour podcast. We are off to a flying start on the YouTube. If you find us on YouTube through this, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. If you're listening to the audio only version, thanks for supporting the show. Become a patron. Go to saintshappyhour.com. Support the show, become a patron. Andrew, the off season for the Saints is going to be crazy starting on Black Monday. You want to have the best Saints podcast. Be a member, be a supporter, because other Saints podcasts, when breaking news happens, they'll be like, "Oh, we'll get to it tonight. We'll do a show tomorrow. We'll get to it." You know who does? You know who comes first with the breaking news podcast? Us. Saints break news. We go, if we have to, we'll do it behind a dumpster. In trash, giving you breaking news analysis. We'll make Thomas record it back in Poland. Nobody else does that, and it only costs you $10 a month. Sign up. I'm telling you.
We actually have Thomas is in Poland, but a lot of times he's asleep when it's time to break news. So we actually have cattle prods that are attached to his body.
That's right.
And when he's asleep, we have buttons. This is the kind of technology we work with. We have buttons. We just hit it, and it shocks him back into being awake, so that he's ready to help us record.
That's right.
So.
That's right. So boom.
Cutting edge stuff.
Saying, every other Saints podcast, they do wonderful work, but they're not us. We kill it on breaking news analysis. So listen, Andrew, the Saints playoff hopes remain a candle in the wind, flickering, barely alive, but they're at like 4%. They're like 4% or 2%. So listen, they're going to Philly. Philly is very injured in this game. They're going to be possibly
more injured than the Saints, though.
Nobody's more injured than the Saints.
Yeah.
Nobody's more injured. But they are missing a corner. They're missing a left tackle. Miles Sanders, their running back, he's been not fully practicing this week. Jalen Hurts may or may not play. It looks like he's going to play. If you go off the Vegas line, the line started at Philly 7 and went down to Saints 5.5. Then news broke this week that Jalen Hurts was practicing. He was limited back up to 6.5. So I get the sense the gamblers and the momentum seems to be that Jalen Hurts is going to play. Listen, Saints beat Philly. Carolina beats Tampa. Saints are alive for one more week in the NFC South. This game, Andrew, I look at it as it is a terrible matchup for the Saints. And this is why. The Saints offensive line, they're going to be without both of their starting guards. They have had trouble with the line all year. And Philadelphia, if they have one more guy get another sack, I think it's Sweat. If he gets one more sack, they'll have 4 guys with 10 sacks. And that'll be the first time that's ever happened in NFL history. That is a disaster recipe for the Saints, I fear.
Yeah, 61 sacks on the year is bananas. It's crazy. It makes you wonder how Dallas was able to put up 40 points on them last week. But yeah, that is wild. 61 sacks. I don't know that, Ralph, I've seen a number that high in years.
I mean, that's 2000 Saints level.
Yeah. I would have to look back at history. I mean, I would think that they're in the mix to have the most sacks by a team in a single season ever.
It is. It's weird because they didn't count sacks until the early 80s. So like people have gone back and like looked at them and like even though sacks weren't an official stat, like those 80s Bears teams have a couple of years with like 69 and 72, but they don't really count because they weren't an official stat yet. So like they can get it. If they get, I think if you get to 69, they break the record, which
it sounds like the 84 Bears in 1984 had 72, which is the most ever. And look, they're 11 behind. I don't think they're getting 11 sacks in 2 games, especially the Saints. they're not a team that gets sacked a ton. So, Andy Dalton does a pretty good job of getting the ball out pretty quickly. So, I don't know that they're going to get a ton of sacks. But, look, the game plan is very clear. It's funny. I was watching Hard Knocks the other day and catching up on that a little bit. And I was watching a game. The Cardinals were playing against the Rams. And the Cardinals were having to start a new center, a rookie guard who hadn't played all year against the Rams. Mm-hmm. And, their whole week of preparation, again, Kyler Murray's out. And their whole week of preparation, it's like, how the heck are we going to block Aaron Donald? We're starting a rookie, we have no shot. How the hell are we going to figure this out? And Colt McCoy basically fixed the problem. And you could see guys, everything's mic'd up. And so you see guys on the sideline talking. And you have defenders from the Cardinals, and they're kind of talking about McCoy. And they're like, how is he still in the league? Look at it. The ball's out in 1.5 seconds. It's impossible to defend. It's so annoying. The ball's out so fast, you don't know what to do. And they were just remarking that that's where a guy like Colt McCoy, who doesn't have any elite trait, isn't that special of a quarterback. Why he sticks around is because the ball's out quickly, on time, accurately to the spot he wants to put it. And you can make a career out of that. Yeah, and that's what Andy Dalton has done this season. And so you look at Andy Dalton, his quarterback ratings are around 95. I think one of the biggest misconceptions this season is all these fans that think he sucks. He is playing at a really high level. So much so that I've been told the Saints are interested in potentially bringing him back next year to be their starter. Potentially, depending on how other things shake out. But I just think this is the kind of game where Andy's internal clock has to be faster than ever. And so no Jarvis Landry and no Michael Thomas sucks. Because those are the ideal receivers for this kind of game
maybe
plan.
Olave's hurt.
Right? I think Olave's going to play, but look, he's going to have to find a way to get the ball out quickly. So that's going to mean shorter routes for some of these guys. He's going to be looking for those times he gets the matchups he likes. Remember last week with Kirkwood, he snaps the ball and the ball's out of his hands almost immediately. And he sees that matchup one-on-one with Kirkwood. Kirkwood's got size, and he's I'm just going to loft it up there and let him go get it. Now, Kirkwood drops both passes, but those were good throws. They were catchable balls, and it was the right matchup, so it was the right decision. So it's a lot of that, where's my matchups, and are they playing zone? Are they playing man? Right. Where are my matchups? And pre-snap kind of determining where I'm going to go with the football. And if it's not there, you check down immediately. All right, where's my check down? Boom, And honestly, if Jameis Winston was playing in this game, and there are reasons to start Jameis, there are reasons to start Andy Dalton. This isn't me trashing Jameis Winston or saying that Andy Dalton's way better. But in a game like this, I would be terrified of starting Jameis Winston.
Well, here's the thing. I think Philadelphia is going to look at the Saints line and be we're rushing 4. We can rush 4. We can rush 4. If Andy starts to cook a little bit, we'll bring 5. Maybe. But we're gonna rush 4 and we're gonna get there. And oh, by the way, we're gonna stuff the Saints running game in a sock. But
must be nice, huh?
Must be nice.
It must be nice. It's interesting. If you look at the Saints pass rush, Ralph, they've been kind of garbage all year. The defensive line has been a disappointment. And you got to give Dennis Allen a lot of credit here. As much as people like to trash him, he's figured out how to get Demario Davis up to career high in sacks. Caden Ellis has, I think he's number 2 on the team, maybe, or close to it, tied. But he's basically figured out how to blitz. He's kind of has these packages now, and they're doing this more and more, where they'll have 3 down they'll have 3 down rushers, and then you'll have both Demario and Caden Ellis show they're going to blitz, but you don't know which one is going to do it. And when the ball gets snapped, one of them drops back into coverage and the other one blitzes, but you don't know which one it's going to be. And I've liked that package because it is a little confusing, and it makes the offensive line think about pre-snap. Okay, who's got this guy if this guy does this? And so I like the surprise element of it, and it's been effective. The Saints, they're not awful in terms of sacks. As bad as the defensive line,
over 40 sacks.
Yeah, as bad as the defensive line is bad, they're over 40, and it's because between Demario and Caden Ellis, they're or at like
Yeah.
12 sacks or 11 sacks
Yeah,
combined.
to be over 40 and not have a double-digit sack guy is it's weirdly impressive and depressing at the same time with the Saints.
Yeah, agreed.
But I will say this for Philadelphia. They have struggled at times to stop the run. So like if the Saints are going to win this game, like they need to make Philadelphia gives up 120 yards on the ground. They brought back and they got Ndamukong Suh out of retirement. They got Lindell Joseph, two old guys, because they're Jordan Davis, the guy they drafted in the first round. He's been hurt. And when he's been playing, their run defense has been pretty good. But it's been shaky. So like the Saints need to run the ball on Philly. The interesting thing with Philly, Andrew, is we don't know who's going to play. And I will say this. I do not understand the Gardner Minshew love mania with potential Saints fans that like want him as a quarterback in 2023 and just the NFL in general. I look at Gardner Minshew and he's like Teddy Bridgewater. He's beloved, but he's very mediocre. And by the way, at the height of Minshew mania in 2019, when Jacksonville was playing and he had just started and he was playing really good and he had a bunch of good games in a row. At his height, the Saints went to Jacksonville and Dennis Allen basically murdered Minshew mania 2019 in the crib. Like Jacksonville was freaking terrible that game. Minshew was terrible. And the Saints, I think they won like 14-6 or something horrible, but their defense just totally crushed him.
Yeah.
So some good positive things to lean on. We got to be positive as the Saints play Eagles. What do you look at on defense? Because listen, the Saints, Dennis Allen, he might have kicked Minshew's butt in Jacksonville, but Jalen Hurts, he owned the Saints when the Saints defense was good. So what are we looking for Sunday?
Yeah, I'm at a loss, man. Because 2 years ago, obviously the Saints got road graded by Jalen Hurts in that running game. And then I feel like that tape was out there. So it was like, if you were ever going to fix it last year, it was kind of like, okay, they smashed us last year. We're aware of it. This is a tough matchup. How do we fix it? And they couldn't. And it was kind of the same thing all over again. So now 3 years in a row,
that's right.
This version of the Saints defense is the spottiest with tackling. They don't have Lattimore. Coverage is not quite as good. Defensive line is aged. They're not performing at the same level. So and they're not stopping the run. So all those things, maybe that's it. Maybe it's bizarro Saints where when the defense isn't as good, then I don't know. Surprise. The thing is though, the Saints, the last 4 weeks, they've given up average of 14.5 points the last 4 weeks. And there was another stat, 14.5 points through 4. And they're the number 2 pass defense in the league.
That's right.
Which is a crazy stat to me. Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, they don't really they'll get you with a big play here and there, but they're really a run offense. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think the matchup sucks. I think the matchup is brutal for the Saints. And I think when the Saints have the ball, they've been kind of handcuffed. This is one of those games where it would be great if the Saints could run the ball, but they've been really up and down this year running the football. And as much as Saints fans want to give Taysom Hill 60 carries a game, I think Saints fans, if they were the offensive coordinator, they would get Taysom Hill hurt after one game.
That's right.
And then they would be like, "Oh, I was unlucky."
That's right.
You have to manage players, and Taysom is over 30, has a history of injuries. He plays a very physical, brutal style of running.
That's right.
In half these games, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but he gets blasted in the helmet, or he gets hit. He takes a huge hit, and he's kind of jogging back gingerly to the sideline, and coaches are like, "All right, I gotta manage that. I can't just throw him back out there and let him run 4-5 plays in a row and just take a beating." So, Taysom Hill, I don't think fans get it. And, they try to crush Pete Carmichael for this, but I would ask you this, was Taysom Hill ever more effective under Sean Payton?
No.
I would make the argument that this year under Pete Carmichael is the most effective Taysom Hill has ever been in his career running the football.
Taysom Hill, I know the stat nerds and the cap people hate it. Taysom Hill, for what he's given the Saints, he's worth what they pay him. He's got 500 yards rushing.
6.5 a carry, yeah.
Yeah, his receiving's been really spotty. Like I going into this year, I had it in my mind that he was a better receiver maybe than he was. He's really spotty playing tight end, like really. And why wouldn't he be?
He's dropped some critical passes this year.
Why wouldn't he be? He's a quarterback playing tight end. Like why wouldn't he be spotty at tight end? But my perception of him was he was better than he is because the thing is with Taysom. The thing is, I think why we think he's better than he is at receiver is because he doesn't run like a quarterback. Like when he lines up at receiver, right, and he catches a pass and he's in the open field, he doesn't look like a quarterback running. It isn't even Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. He doesn't look like them. He looks like a receiver catching a pass and running a route. So it's sort of, I think it clouds our judgment a little bit. But to your point, like clearly the Saints, they're not stupid. They clearly have decided, look, we cannot give Taysom Hill more than this amount of workload. And they've stuck to it all year. And the thing is, it's worked. Remember,
he's been healthy.
I know it feels like 1,000 years ago, Andrew, but he hurt a rib the first day of camp and he wasn't in pads. Like, remember that? We were like, oh, that one day that Taysom was healthy was delightful in camp.
And he's coming off of microfracture surgery on his foot from week 18 of last year.
That's right.
So, I mean, look, you got to manage the player, but the Saints are in a tough spot because they didn't draft a running back, right? And I firmly believe, like, I've been saying that since the draft, like that was a mistake. Mm-hmm. And so then you're this style of offense where you're supposed to be a play action team with Jameis Winston, right? But then Jameis Winston breaks his back. He's out. So now you're with Andy Dalton, and now you're a run-first team, right? Mm-hmm. And so Ingram's knee is not right. He's been down pretty much up and down all year. You lose Latavius Murray, which is kind of an underrated thing that was kind of a big blow.
Let's hold on a bit. I think your opinion at the time was a reasonable one. You were like, listen, it's Latavius Murray. Like, if Latavius Murray is going to swing, if that's so goddamn critical to you in a season, like, if you think that's going to be the difference between making the playoffs and not, like, that's not going to be that huge of a deal. And I believe that your opinion of that at the time was reasonable. What we didn't know was that the NFC South was a dumpster fire. And, like, it's so bad that, like, Latavius Murray, he probably makes the difference between like 7 wins or 8 wins. Like he would have made the difference in the Tampa game. Or it was so like the South is so bad. Like those little things matter more when it's 4 bad teams.
Well, here's the thing. So you become a different team with Andy Dalton as quarterback, and you become a different offense. And so we mentioned Ingram and the injuries. You lose Latavius Murray. You don't draft it back. And so I think their hand has been forced to turn Alvin Kamara into the primary lead back for this run first team and go in between the tackles. And I just, that's not really who he is.
No.
And like, besides that, like Kamara is 39 out of 40 backs in the league in yards after contact. And I remember when he was a rookie and when he was rookie of the year, when he had tremendous seasons, like his balance was insane. Remember how he used to be like the first guy never brings him down. Remember we used to always say that, like whoever tries to tackle him first, forget it. Like his balance is crazy. And like,
that's right.
I'm not seeing that this year.
Yeah.
The first guy that hits him, he goes down. And part of that's maybe like he's not getting to the second level as much. Part of that is less sweeps, less screen passes. It's more like pounding in between the tackles, and it's a defensive tackle getting his hands on him or whatever. But I just feel like the Saints run game is really up and down this year because Kamara is really up and down. And I just feel like if they're going to be this style of offense, then they need to trade him away and they need to get someone else, you know, because like, I just don't think he's the right back for this offense. So, you know, when you look at this matchup, and this is again why I think it's brutal, when you're like, yeah, the Saints really can't get sacked. They can't throw a bunch. Like they got to run the ball. They got to control the ball offensively with the run game. I think the Saints are in a tough spot because number one, I think Kamara is the wrong back for that. And number two, like you can't overplay Taysom as much as fans would love to. Right. So to me, that all adds up to, on both sides of the ball, terrible matchup.
I just think for this game, like Philadelphia's going to have to help the Saints. Like,
we need shenanigans.
We need shenanigans. And I'm telling you, like,
we need a blocked punt. We need
Yeah.
Shaheed to run a kickoff back. We need a fumbled snap that like the ref blows the whistle when like Philly takes it back 99 yards for a touchdown. The ref accidentally blows the whistle. Like we need bad ref calls. We need it all.
And the Saints probably need +2 in the turnover battle. And Andrew, I think if the Saints are +2 in the turnover battle, I think that maybe only gets you to, oh my God, it's 5 minutes to go in this game and it's 20-17 Saints. Like Philadelphia.
I could see that. I could see this going one of two ways, Ralph. Like on one hand, the Saints have won 2 games in a row against Atlanta and Cleveland in horrible weather, right? Which that game wasn't about football; it was about managing the conditions. So you two kind of like whatever wins, right? Neither of them felt great. Like the Saints kind of won both, and so on the other side of that, I could see the rude awakening where like, oh, maybe they're turning a corner. Maybe they're not as bad as we thought. And like the Eagles like, no, you're a terrible football team and we're going to show you. Then we're going to embarrass you. And like, you know, the Saints lose by 3 touchdowns or whatever, and it's never close. Or I could see sometimes when you win a couple of games and they're awful. I mean, even if they're awful, I have seen this kind of false sense of like, momentum that teams start to feel
like,
and like they get a couple awful wins and like the vibe's better and guys start trying a little bit more and nobody gives the Saints a chance going into Philly. Nobody does.
You hit Shaheed on a big play.
You hit Shaheed on a big play and all of a sudden you're riding the wave of like the last 2 weeks and defense is feeling good and Alontae Taylor gets his first pick and that finally he gets it and that energizes everyone and like I don't know. I could see that happening. So I don't know, man. Like I feel like I could see it either like being a competitive game that the Saints find a way to win. Yeah. Or I could see the doors getting blown off.
The most Saintsy thing, or one of them, would be Saints play A+ game, their best game of the year. Look fantastic. And we're like, where has this been all year, Dennis Allen?
Yeah. And Saints they lose by 10.
and Tampa beats Carolina and it's over with. It's over.
I could see
and
that.
You're 7-9 and it's over. And you're just like, you want.
I still maintain that Carolina beating Tampa, Saints beat the Eagles. And we're like, well, none of this matters because Tampa's going to win next week against Atlanta. And the Saints beat Carolina at home. And Atlanta's up 17. And we're like, oh my God, this is happening. We're winning the NFC South. And then Tom Brady comes back and and he wins.
I would come back. The thing is though, even at that moment, I would be excited. I would be less excited in that moment than I was last year when the Rams were kicking the crap out of San Francisco. Because I would just know, like I would be like, I know Atlanta, I know them.
Yeah.
We know we have intimate knowledge of the Falcons. We know how this is going to go, and I would just literally be sitting there with a bourbon in my hand, waiting for the collapse to happen. And I probably would just be like, yeah, that's how I expected it to go.
I just think like this offseason, Ralph, in the next 2 weeks, I know this isn't an Eagles preview comment, but I'll just talk really quickly about the NFC South in the offseason. So I think these next 2 weeks are critical, first of all, because I think a lot of decisions get made based on how these 2 weeks go. Like Carolina, if they win these next 2 games and they win the NFC South, like could they keep their interim coach?
That's right.
Right?
I think they would.
Or Tampa, like if they win, like does Tom Brady still like I'm out of here, or does he, I don't know, get rejuvenated by winning the division and getting to the playoffs, and like how do they do in the playoffs? So like how that plays out is interesting. But then on the other side of that, okay, Mariota's out, and Atlanta, Carolina, and the Saints were all three all in on Deshaun Watson. They did everything they could to try to get them. We know Carolina's interested in Sean Payton. And we also know that to get him, they're going to have to pay more than everybody else. So, like, I don't know that they get him, but, like, unless they win the division, they're probably looking for a new coach, right? Yeah. Tom Brady is probably out in Tampa. Atlanta, like, are they going to rest their laurels on Desmond Ridder? Are they just gonna be fine with
Todd
that?
Bowles might be out in Tampa too. Like if Tampa doesn't win
we'll
the
see.
South,
If they don't win
he
the
could be
South,
out.
I think he might be. Yeah. But like, is Atlanta just gonna roll with Desmond Ridder? Is that like
No way.
Arthur Smith is on the chopping block? Is he gonna like put his job in the hands of Desmond
No
Ridder
way.
and hope it works
No
out?
way.
So like, and then you've got the Saints. So like, I just feel like this offseason, like all four of those teams are going to have a lot of change. It's going to be bananas. And like these 2 weeks are going to inform a lot of the direction they go in. It's going to be really exciting.
And I'm going to tell you, that's another reason to sign up and become a Saints Happy Hour patron, because we're going to be covering it all. But I'm going to tell you this, Andrew. David Carr, like he's broken up with the Raiders. Like they benched him. They sent him
Derek,
home.
you mean?
Yeah, Derek. Derek Carr. They benched him. They sent him
You
home.
call
They
him
broke up.
David, like not you have called him the correct name like 1% of the
One time. Derek, if you come to the Saints, I promise I'll get it up to 50%. I'll stop calling you David. But here's the thing, Andrew. He's going to be available, Derek Carr. And I'm just telling you, it's going to be the four teams in the NFC South. They're going to go in the octagon and they're going to fight it out for Derek Carr. Like, because you're going to have Carolina be like, we're a quarterback away, right? We almost won this division. Tampa's going to be like, we won the division. With Brady, we get Derek Carr, we can keep winning the division. Atlanta will be like, if we get a decent quarterback with our running game, we can win. Saints too be like, if we get Derek Carr, we can compete. Like all four of those teams are going to go incredibly hard for Derek Carr.
I mean, forget Derek Carr. Wentz, Geno Smith, Garoppolo, Carr. I think any of those guys that are going to be available on this market, all four of those teams are going to be in play for all of them. And so the moving and shaking is going to be interesting. Thomas, we need a chime. We need something for every time Ralph says David Carr instead of Derek. You just need like a ching, like some sort of acknowledgement, some subtle acknowledgement that's thinly veiled, that patrons know like we're calling Ralph out for screwing up again.
The number over under of me calling Derek Carr David.
It's off the board. Vegas took it off the board.
It's off the board.
People pounded it so hard already. Vegas is like, we can't deal with this volume of bets.
There is not a number high enough that you can bet on that if the Saints are in competition to get Derek/David, like, just forget about it 50, 100 times. Like, if you have the Deshaun Watson where we were doing 2 podcasts a day, I would put the over-under on me calling Derek Carr David 150. I would set it.
Yeah. Yep.
So, guys, listen.
You want to bet the over.
I want to bet. Oh, the overs it's a lock. But here's the thing, and final thing, and then we'll get out of here. I know a lot of Saints fans. I hear they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad the season's over. I've just been miserable. Only 2 more weeks, and then we're done with it." Andrew, I get sad when football's over. Like, I've waited all year for this. I only got 2 more weeks of Saints football, and then I got to wait 9 more freaking months for it. Like, I'm sad. I know the Saints are not good. I know it, but I'm sad. Like, we only get 2 more Sundays of this. How are you feeling about the Saints season that it's coming to a close? We only get 2 more.
No, I'm with you. I think it's more fun when they win, of course. But I feel like every season, each game is like its own story, you know, and I have like, there's been some great moments, like the 24-0 win over the Raiders was so weird. And Devontae Adams had like 1 catch.
That's right.
I mean, what was that? Lattimore wasn't even playing. The Cleveland game was hilarious. I mean, coldest game in Saints history for them to be down 10-0.
Bonehead coaching left and right everywhere.
Yep. We swept the Falcons. You know, what's not to like about that? So I don't know. Like, there's been some positive moments. Like the double doink was crushing.
Yeah.
Tom Brady coming back to beat us the second time in Tampa, that was crushing. So like, there's been some really
crushing.
There's been some really tough moments too. But I don't know, like through all the ups and downs, like that's why we're Saints fans. And I don't know, that's why I don't get Saints Twitter sometimes, is I just feel like there's so much vitriol, there's so much anger, there's so much negativity. And like sometimes like these guys, they try their best and it doesn't work out. And to me, like the biggest takeaway of the season is you've paid a lot of money to a lot of guys that didn't produce this year, and I think
the Saints stars go into that because if you look at the Saints this year, like their big guys, their stars are the ones that got hurt or just let them down.
Like I hear a lot of people say like, oh, the team's not as good as we thought they were, like the roster's bad, or they blame Dennis Allen, but like I don't feel like enough has been blamed on the players. And when you get hurt, it's not your fault, but I'm just saying like they got 3 games out of Michael Thomas. I mean, his contract is insane. Kamara has a huge contract. He's 39th out of 40 backs in yards after contact. And that's not even accounting for all the mental mistakes that he's made this year.
Davenport has half a sack.
Davenport has half a sack. They gave up 2 first-round picks for half a sack. Lattimore has played 4 games this year.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with Davenport is it's just straight decline. I know he's been banged up a little, but we've never seen this out of him where he plays and he's terrible.
I mean, I think a lot of times you look at a guy and you're like, oh, he's just 26 or he's just 27. But sometimes like football players get worse. They just do. And I think a lot of stars have either gotten hurt, they've gotten complacent, they've gotten worse. I think DeMario Davis and Cam Jordan aren't as good as they used to be. So, to me, that's been the big thing is they try to run it back with a bunch of guys that just like they pay a lot of money to, and those guys did not deliver. And that's the bottom line. So you ask, like, here's the thing, like, so they have a big rebuild ahead of them in some ways, but the division's awful. That's the first thing. So like you can fight for the NFC South and win it potentially next year. And are they that much worse without those guys at this point?
That's right.
Like let's just say they get rid of Lattimore, they trade him. Let's say they get a first for Lattimore. Let's say they trade Kamara for a 2nd-round pick. Let's say, they cut Michael Thomas and get some cap relief. And they unload DeMario Davis and Cam Jordan. Like, let's say they get rid of those 5 players. On paper, like, those are big names. And you hear that and you're just like, oh my God, that sounds awful, right? But then you've got Werner and Caden Ellis as your linebackers. Maybe that's an upgrade. Maybe they don't need Lattimore now that Adebo is playing at a decent level and Alontae Taylor might be a pretty good corner. Maybe they don't need Lattimore that much. Maybe Michael Thomas is going to get injured again no matter what team he goes to, and he's done. He's finished. That's right. And maybe, Cam Jordan and you use those resources to kind of draft, and maybe they get a couple picks for Sean Payton and they get a first for Lattimore and they get a 2nd for Kamara, and all of a sudden you're loaded with picks in this draft and you get a bunch of young players. And like, are they especially if let's say they get a quarterback, let's say they get Derek Carr, are they necessarily going to be worse than they were this past season? I don't know that they will be, especially in a division like this.
And
so that's where the offseason is super interesting.
And you just and everybody will think they're worse, but you're like, those guys didn't really play. They didn't really produce. And like Cam Jordan is like kind of declining and he only had 5.5 sacks. And like, you couldn't do anything cap wise, but the dead money eventually would clear out. And we know the Saints eventually will spend the money when they get the chance. So it's just really interesting. They could do what you just said, or they could try to run it back. I worry, Andrew, that I look at the Saints and I see them in the exact same position that Atlanta was in 2016 and 2017. Atlanta went to the Super Bowl, blew the 28-3 lead. We love it. Then their defense was bad, but they got kind of healthy and they went on this run and got them to the Super Bowl. The next year, they were still good, went to the playoffs, beat the Rams. And the next 2 years in 18, 19, and 2021 a little bit, like they kept saying, well, if our defense can just get healthy, they played so good in the Super Bowl those 2 years we went to the playoffs, so they can just get healthy, we'll be fine. And finally, Atlanta's like, these dudes are never going to get healthy. They're old and they're not any good. So like, I wonder, like, if you're the Saints, do you try to get ahead of it? It's going to be fascinating because the Saints, Mickey Loomis hates rebuilds. Like he loves to go for it and win. And like the Saints don't rebuild. It's like, the Rams have the slogan, fuck them picks. Mickey Loomis kind of has the slogan of fuck that rebuild. So like, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And it starts for the Saints, like the news and what happens in this offseason, it isn't a case of, oh, the season ends, we watch the playoffs, and then we'll figure it out. We'll see what they do. Maybe they'll do some coaching staff changes when they go to the Senior Bowl. No. Everything for the Saints offseason, that starts Black Monday. It starts Black Monday. Not for the Saints for firing Dennis Allen, but other teams firing their coaches, the Sean Payton sweepstakes. That kicks off on Black Monday. Hell, it might kick off Sunday with a splash report from Jay Glazer. You don't know.
Yeah. It's going to happen fast. We're a couple weeks away. So the timing, like it's almost going to feel like a new season starts for us almost immediately.
That's right.
Because of the Sean Payton stuff. But yeah, it's hard. Look, I remember like they held on to Marcus Colston too long. Remember, like it was clear that he was done, and they kind of they wanted him to end his career with the Saints, so like they hung on to him. And I think the art a lot of times with this, it's hard to cut Michael Thomas because you're basically admitting that you screwed up with that contract. It's hard to trade Lattimore and Kamara, who are productive players for you. Because that's admitting that, yeah, maybe like it wasn't the best idea to give them those contracts. It's hard, like DeMario Davis and Cam Jordan, like you have that emotional attachment. So it's you know, there's an instinct to want to hang on to them longer than you want to. But look, it's tough. Like these are real people. These are personalities. These are guys that have meant a lot to the building. But I believe that the art to being successful in roster building is about knowing when to cut guys loose. And I'm not saying that necessarily you cut all 5 of those guys loose, but you have some tough decisions to make. And sometimes like you're kind of on the fence and you're like, now we're going to bring him back for one more year. And like Zach Strief plays the best year of his career at 33 years old. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you hang on to a guy and they surprise you. And sometimes you're like, no, we're going to go ahead and cut the cord, and somebody steps up. Rashid Shaheed is given an opportunity, and all of a sudden he steps up and he's awesome, right?
That's
like
right.
If Deontay hadn't gone down and Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry, Rashid Shaheed wouldn't be seeing the field. And now he's ahead of Traquan, he's ahead of Callaway, and he's getting a ton of snaps. And like sometimes like stars are born of opportunity being created, and you've got to be able to have the guts to create that opportunity for them. And so anyway, it's all going to be fascinating, but I just think like for Mickey Loomis, sometimes like it's important to be brave and make these decisions before the decisions make themselves for you.
That's right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and we'll just have to see. It's going to be incredibly fascinating because the NFC South being bad makes it very hard. Because like if you were in the AFC West and you looked at Mahomes and you looked at Herbert, you could be like, listen, we can tear it down because this roster that we got, we don't have a quarterback. This ain't it. And then we ain't winning shit. So let's tear it down and build it back up. And maybe when Mahomes and Herbert get old or whatever, we got to have a much better team, right? So the rebuild becomes easier. But when you're in a division that's so terrible, you're just like, man, I don't want to suffer for a year or two. Like, let's just tweak this and tweak that and get Derek Carr and draft a running back or sign Tony Pollard and get a running back and we're good to go. Like to me, that makes it harder for the Saints, but it also makes it way, way more fascinating. So we'll see. But it starts Sunday. We'll see if the Saints duck Philadelphia. If the Saints beat Philadelphia, I'm going to dunk all over the Eagles fans. They have been tormenting Saints fans, Andrew, all freaking year. CD Deuce, they have our pick. They have been running roughshod over us. If the Saints give it to them on Sunday, I'm going to get banned from their Twitter because I got named. I'm going all of them.
What's our playoff record against the Eagles?
3-1.
Okay. So there's that.
There's that.
And yeah, I would just go to that.
There's that. But we'll see. Yeah. Like the Eagles fans have been insufferable, and if the Saints can beat them, it'd be amazing.
It would be beautiful.
Guys, thanks for joining us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're seeing this on YouTube. Like it, share it, and become a patron. Go to saintshappyhour.com, sign up, become a patron. I promise you, it's going to be the best money you spend all year long. to make your Saints fan experience better, because you're going to need it. You're going to need us for breaking news starting on Black Monday, I promise you. So for Andrew, for Thomas running the show back in Poland, thanks for joining us. We will see you Sunday after the Saints-Eagles game. Hopefully it's a win.